welcome back to the Dreamcast. I am your host, Denise Walsh. I combine science, scripture, and stories that will inspire you to dive deep, break through your own personal glass ceiling, and design a life of your dreams. Do you feel like you've not been able to make headway in achieving your goals? Or did you start the year pumped, ready to move forward on making things happen and simply lost your way? Things don't need to just get better. They actually can be better. In Design Your Dream Life, I'll show you a proven pathway to take you from where you are now to a life filled with joy, wholeness, success, and fulfillment. I'll give you the keys to not just developing a plan, but taking massive empowered action to make your dreams a reality. Turn roadblocks into stepping stones and leverage the power of gratitude and forgiveness. Let's face it, taking massive empowered action and making your dreams a reality isn't always easy. So I'll be there with you every step of the way. Visit dreamlifetoolkit.com to purchase your copy of Design Your Dream Life, obtain resources, and join our free community. Again, that's dreamlifetoolkit.com. Big welcome back to the Dreamcast. Our next guest grew up with an alcoholic father, and her family lost everything. You guys, I don't know if you have had addiction in your family, no matter what kind of addiction it is. It can create an atmosphere of chaos, confusion, uncertainty, and honestly, a bit of drama, right? And when you live in drama, it's very tricky to step out and live in the world of dreams because you're so consumed with what's happening around you. And that's truly an atmosphere that our guest grew up in. She decided that her past wasn't going to be her future, but yet her life didn't turn out as planned. After graduating from law school with $206,000 in debt, she was stressed, stuck in scarcity, and unhappy. She was struggling in her life and nothing seemed to be working. Desperate for a change in her life, she turned towards personal development that led her to become a certified life coach. And today, she has stepped away from those careers and currently runs a six-figure-plus online business, replacing her corporate salary by teaching people how to live intentionally and reignite their lives by rewiring their brain and emotions to create the results they most want in life. Can you tell we need to be friends? I am so excited to hear her story from growing up, losing everything, to truly living a life she loves. So big Dreamcast, welcome to Natalie Bacon.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've been connecting before we pressed record, and we're like, oh my gosh, yes, we are soul sisters, because we really do believe you can have everything. No matter where you come from, you can step up and grow into all you're called to be, but it's not always easy. So Natalie, before we jump into what you're doing now, I'd love to hear a bit about where you came from.
Yeah, so as you kind of mentioned, my dad, he was a very high functioning alcoholic. So he was a dentist. And I grew up pretty middle class. And for any of you listening, if you have alcoholics in the family, you sort of know what that's like, especially if they're high functioning and present. It can be a very slow degradation of the family. And at the time, as a kid, especially as the oldest, I never really thought about it in those moments as losing everything or traumatic. But I saw very early on in my young adult life how much I had learned to cope in ways in my childhood that weren't really serving me in my adult life. Whether that meant I was always trying to achieve and overachieve to kind of receive love, or whether I was always trying to people please and seek external validation. It took a lot of awareness and life coaching and self-coaching and really changing my entire identity to get to the other side of that. And all along the way, I transitioned from multiple careers and I'm happy to quote unquote be on the other side where I really do love, the life that I'm living and have built this business and have an amazing man and a puppy. So I do like to share my story because I get it. I've been there even with, the debt and the the alcoholic dad. It was a hard thing, but you absolutely can change it. And I really did.
When did you first realize that, okay, the things I learned growing up aren't serving me now? Because I don't think that, I mean, sometimes we don't quite realize what we're doing, you know? And so when did you look back and say, all right, that maybe was a protective mechanism back then, but I don't need it anymore?
It was through my learning. So I've always been an avid learner. And I remember stumbling upon self-help books. And one of the first books that I read was called, called Perfect Daughters or something like that, or Perfect Daughter. And it was about daughters of alcoholic parents. And my mind was blown. That was the very first time I remember my eyes being opened to families being very different than mine was. So I wasn't a victim of like any physical abuse or anything. So but my parents, of course, just with like most alcoholic families, there's tension, right? There's ups and downs and there's fighting. And so I just thought that was normal. And so that was kind of the first time that I learned about it. And so that piqued my curiosity. And so then I just continued to learn about it slowly. And I could see how I was coping in ways that weren't serving me, and not necessarily like the way you would think. Like I know some people lean on their own addictions. It wasn't like that for me. It was more like seeking that external validation, right? Like one of my coaches told me, you were just confused about where love came from. You thought it came from something outside of you. I was like, what? It was like a light bulb moment. And love is something, it's a feeling, it's an emotion that you create. And so, you know, I'm constantly learning and growing and applying these life coaching tools to myself. And that's why I think I'm so passionate about it, because I've seen how much they've healed me in my own life.
Well, and I can imagine that growing up in a family where it's just tense and maybe you're walking on eggshells, or you know, one thing one day might be fine, the other day might create a fight to break out, or it just may be inconsistent. But what I find is that when you start to say, okay, that was then, this is now, and I don't need to respond in that way anymore, you can truly learn new ways to cope with situations and offer yourself your own love. But before that, you were high, like, what did you say? Achiever. Yeah, is that what got you to be an attorney and a financial planner? Tell me about life those years.
Yeah, so I still identify as a high achiever, but now I have so much more love around that label and not so much stress and hustle. So if any lawyers are listening, you know what it's like. It's just a grind, and in a way that is not typically super enjoyable. So I became an attorney. I had $206,000 of student loan debt. And I immediately wanted to start a blog about money while I was practicing law, because I felt like if I consider myself pretty highly educated, if I'm a woman who, you know, kind of quote unquote did everything they were supposed to do, checking all these boxes, and I still ended up with all this debt, knowing nothing about money, I really wanted to learn about it and then help educate other women. So that was kind of my first step into baby entrepreneurship, right? I started this blog where I'm publishing blog posts. As I learn about money, I'm sharing it. And I continued to do that for a while, so much so that I really started to fall in love with helping people with their money and seeing that there are other careers with that. And that's kind of what led me to transition into becoming a certified financial planner. And, you know, just like my leap from being a CFP to being a full-time business owner, transitioning from law to being a CFP was so challenging. I tend to make these big leaps thinking about the future that I want to create, but that doesn't mean that it's not terribly frightening as I'm doing it. I just feel it and I just do it anyway.
And so you have that vision. You have a vision of what it is you want, and you use that to fuel you to take that step into the unknown. How long were you doing the financial planning stuff before you made another transition?
I practiced law for just under 5 years. And I practiced as a certified financial planner. I was at a registered investment advisory firm. It was a really good career. I did it for just about 3 years. And at the time I had grown my blog and it was making, you know, side hustle income, right? That's kind of how I would term it, right? A few $1,000s a month. And so it was at the point where I really needed to make a choice. Do I want to go all in with this CFP career, or do I want to go all in with my business? They're kind of at odds with each other a little bit. And I do this thing where I teach designing your future from your future instead of from your past. So I was just writing and writing, what would my future self want me to do? What does my future look like if anything were possible? And it was just so clear to me that it was me owning my own business as an entrepreneur, helping people the way that I've been able to, help myself and get help from other coaches as well. And so that decision was really clear. Taking the action was really hard. So, feeling so anxious, and, my grandma thinks I'm just like, they don't understand, right? I'm going from lawyer to financial planner to what? Like, what do you do? They just don't get it. So really dealing with all of that and having to believe in myself. In general, my family's really supportive, but they're not entrepreneurs. Like, no, I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. No one. I come from a family, like my dad was a dentist. My brother is an oculofacial plastic surgeon. Like, people in my family love education, always, always, always. So I'm the first entrepreneur. So I had all of that kind of weighing on me. Like, this decision is a big one. And I just saw so many people doing it that I believed that I could just continue to fail forward. So, just like passing the bar is really hard and passing the CFP exam was hard. I just continued to believe that even if I make failures in business, I can still keep going. And so I just did it, feeling terrified that day of. I will never, ever forget that. It was horrible.
Is it a clean slate where you had to quit your job and say, all right, I'm going in? Or did you grow your side hustle to a point where it was a transition, or was it like, all right, I got to be done?
It was interesting. I originally had planned to pay off all of my student loan debt before quitting my corporate job, right? Very thought out and well planned. And then I went to a conference, which is why I just encourage everyone to, just like they're doing, listen to your podcast or go to conferences. You get around people who think differently, and then your brain expands, right? So, and it can never go back. So I went to this conference. It was a traffic and conversion summit, I think, with one of my peers and friends who has a 7-figure business. And she and I were there with all of these business owners. And at the time, my business wasn't even 6 figures yet. And it was so clear to me that I needed to quit. Like, they were like, you work at a job? They were so, like, these are big owners of companies. They just didn't get it. And so knowing what I know about the brain, I knew that if I went back to my original environment and waited to make the decision, it would be a lot harder. So I made the decision while I was at this conference. And I took small actions. So I told my family, I told my friends, I just started to get that 0 to 1 momentum that's so hard to get. And I got home from that trip, put in my 1-month notice, and that was it. So I still had student loan debt. I was living in Ohio at the time. Now I live in, beautiful downtown Chicago, but, I had some money saved, but it was not, debt-free with $100,000 in the bank like it is now with, I did since pay off my debt, but I really did it based more on a gut feeling than I did based on all of the boxes being checked.
I love that. And I think at the end of the day, that's when we have to take action, is when we're feeling that intuition say, go, do it now, because you're right. If you go back to your original environment, that feeling may fade and your courage may dim and you won't be in that space. Now, you said a few exercises that I'd love to go back to. What would your future self say, and creating your future from your future? Because a lot of times people are in that transition spot and they're asking themselves, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? How do I know what to do? How do I know it's the right decision? And then they take a step and second guess, and we can stay in that race for years. So tell me a bit about those exercises and how they helped you.
Yeah, I love that you're asking about this. It's really important point, right? So if you know anyone who just continuously repeats their past, or they grew up with an alcoholic father and then they marry an alcoholic and they swear they never would, it's actually because your brain is repeating what it knows to be true. And your brain thinks that it's safer to repeat the past than to do something that's unknown. It's kind of where the saying, get outside your comfort zone, comes from. Anytime you do something that's really new and different, your brain sort of freaks out because it's worried about your survival. Like my brain knows living with an alcoholic is something that I can survive. So it actually thinks that that is pretty safe, right? It's so counterintuitive, but it's important you see this because then when you feel a little bit of discomfort in a really normal, stable relationship, you can see that it might just be your brain learning something new. So the same is true with anything with your future. So what I teach is to write a future self letter, and you do it. So we're recording this and it is August of 2020. So you would write it from a year out. So if it's August 2021, you write down, what would my future self a year from now want me to do today? And it sounds a little bit weird at first, for lack of a better word, right? It sounds kind of out there. You will get the best advice from your future self. I'm telling you, and you can ask yourself, should I be worried about this? And what should I do with business? And it's like you get the best advice. And so my future self was really clear to me, like, you have to try to go for this business thing and do it yourself. There's nothing to be worried about. Like, you can take care of it. It's almost like you're reparenting yourself from your highest self, from your inner wisdom.
I love it. And again, you're creating this space for yourself to answer the questions you have, because so often we have these questions, and guess who we ask? Everyone around us. We ask our grandma, we ask our mom, we ask our neighbor, we ask our coworker, we ask all these people around us, but we don't typically spend the time to ask ourselves. And so not only are you creating that space to allow things to bubble up, but you're doing it from the vision intention of a year out, where you can say, all right, because what you're doing too is you're then creating a personal vision of what that future might look like, which gives you a bit more courage to step into it.
Right. And you're doing it from the future instead of what is intuitive for your brain to do, which is to do more of the past. So it's really kind of leaning into that white space in the future of thinking, okay, if anything were possible, like, what is my deepest desire for my life? Like, what do I want to do with my career or my family? Like, it can be for anything, and really tapping into that so you get clear about where you want to go with your life.
You guys, if you have not done this exercise, you need to do it immediately after this episode.
Definitely.
Okay, so you went all in, you quit your job, and you're like, I'm going to do this life coaching thing. And since then, you've paid off all of your student loans. You've had over $400,000 within your business. Like, it's thriving. Tell me a bit about what that pivot looked like, and how did you learn? Like, how'd you do it?
Yeah, I think if I boil it down to one thing, it would be love. I love it. And I love the process. And I know that can sound a little bit like woo, like give me some tactics, but I see so many people rushing around doing the tactics, and under their breath, they're talking about, I can't wait to finish this so I can take a vacation. And their relationship to their business is they want to avoid it. And my relationship is more like, this is my baby and I want to nurture it. And I love the process. So I'm not in a rush, but I'm also taking massive action, and I truly enjoy it. And I think that for me, I'm doing it with something that I love, and that's life and business coaching. So I get to help people design their lives and their businesses and make a lot of money, right? It was recently that I saw that the 12-month was $400K, and I'm sure I'll close the year with $500K. And so my big goal right now is $1 million in my business. But I remember not that long ago, it was just to hit 6 figures. And I think being willing to transition and sort of obliterate your entire identity is part of it. And I learned that early on and was so willing to do that, because whatever your beliefs are right now, that's creating your current result. So if you want a different result, you have to think and believe totally different thoughts. So you have to become this different person. So when I look at who I was last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, I'm almost unrecognizable. And I still love that version of me, but now this is the new version of me. And I'm willing to kind of grow and step into it from a place of loving the process.
And you said your identity shift along the way.
Always. It is a requirement, I think, because let me give you an example. So when I was a CFP building my blog on the side, I forgot to mention this, I was getting up at 4 a.m. to work on my business. So I would have 2 hours of work on my jobby, my blog before work. Then I would go to work and I'd work an hour at lunch. So I had 3 hours in my business by the time I got home from my day job. And so that hustler identity where you're just like grinding, right? To me, it wasn't painful. I like enjoyed it. I'm like, this is the dream. I'm like, I'm going to remember this. I took a picture, right, where I'm working at lunch and I have my PB&J next to me. I'm like, this is like going to be a cool story one day. And so I had that foresight. Like I was so certain of the outcome that I was willing to do that. But I also really did have that as my identity. And so as I transitioned to a full-time solopreneur, that identity shifted. And most recently, now it's the transition to an entrepreneur where I actually have a team. So I have a team, and that's a whole different identity because now you're leading a team. It's not just you. It's not this hustler mentality where I'm working, 12, 18-hour days. Now I'm taking time off and I'm managing a team. And so those are skills that you're learning along the way. And I love to learn, and I love my business and my clients and my team. So I'm here for it, right? I'm making mistakes and I'm here for it. But I know that at every level, there's this new identity shift.
And I love that you said, you're here for it, right? You are saying, I'm open to this change. I'm open to learning. I'm open to this shift. As a solopreneur, you are shipping center and customer service and sales team and marketing and all the things. And as you start working with people and outsourcing and delegating, it is a whole new dynamic on teaching somebody how to be an extension of you.
It's totally different. Yeah. And I think that there's such value in starting as a solopreneur because if you've done the job, you know what it takes to do the job. And while no one's going to, love your business baby the way you do, there's so much value in you understanding like what it takes to get a job done.
Yeah. Because then you can effectively outsource it.
Yes.
You actually know
effectively. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Powerful. So what if somebody's listening and they're saying, all right, I know that I'm ready for something else, or maybe I would love to have the courage to just quit my job and go full on to my side hustle, but I still have some doubt and fear. What would you tell them?
I would do the future self exercise. And I would also make sure that any input that you have, and by input, I mean podcasts, books, the TV, I'm talking the news, like your friends, any sort of input where you're getting other people's thoughts into your brain needs to be positive input that is in the area or in the direction that you want to head. Because when you surround yourself with people who have the results that you want, and it doesn't have to be like you all of a sudden know these 7-figure entrepreneurs, but there's podcasts, right? You're listening to this. So that's a good start, but continue to do that because then you'll start to feel a little bit more comfortable and get that clarity. I think that once you have the clarity, the next step is to make a plan. And then the next step is to just accept that fear is going to be there and that that's okay. Like I feel fear all the time. I even felt fear getting my mini golden doodle like less than a year ago. I'm not kidding. Steve was looking at me like, what is wrong? Like the day of, I was like, I don't know. Like, is this the right decision? I was freaking out, but I knew, okay, I've already made the decision. This is normal. It's just every time my brain does something really new and different, it goes into what I call performance anxiety. It's like you get the jitters. It's right before you're about to get on stage. You're going to have this new life transition. And what the mistake people make is they make that negative emotion mean that they're doing something wrong. They make it mean that they should stop, they should slow down, they should quit, they need to take a break. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It's just your primitive brain doing what brains do, which is trying to make sure you survive. And it thinks that when you do something so different, your survival's at risk. But we also have this other part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, where when you make decisions from a really clean slate, like you get that clarity ahead of time. This is like our ability to plan, right? It's why Penny, my dog, can't plan and I can. So when you make decisions from your prefrontal brain, you live from your highest self. You just can't let that primitive brain stop you.
So what are some ways that we can reprogram our thinking to default to this positive prefrontal brain versus negative or survival mode?
The first step is just to be aware of it. There was this quote, I forget who it was from, but he said, I talk to myself more than I listen to myself. And it really just sums it up perfectly. So your primitive brain is never going to go away, right? We all have a brain. That's how we've evolved to be here. But that's not a problem. The problem is we don't have awareness of that's what's going on. So if you hear your brain having these thoughts that you know you don't actually want to believe, you can talk to yourself. So the example would be on the day that I was quitting my job as a CFP to go all in full time on my business, I still felt really anxious and worried, but I talked to myself. I didn't let that worry part of my brain win. It wasn't like I was pushing it away, but I almost parented it. I would say things like, it's okay. I've already made the decision. There's nothing I can't redecide down the road. I know this is what's best for me. This is a feeling to feel, not a problem to solve. That's another one that I like to say, because we're so quick to want to rush away that feeling. And sometimes we can make it so much worse. We can make the anxiousness or the worry worse instead of accepting it as part of the process and talking back to ourselves and telling that story of acceptance, that positive story.
Ooh, awareness. And then talk to yourself. I love it. It reminds me, my children have been practicing the Rubik's Cube, which, by the way, if you want to learn something, you guys, you can find a tutorial about anything. They watched tutorials for like an hour, and then they now just practice, and they've learned these algorithms to solve the Rubik's Cube that is not just random, which who knew? So regardless, my 6-year-old is practicing, and he's getting frustrated because he keeps messing it up, and he made whatever. And so I'm telling him these exact same steps. I'm saying, Eli, when I get frustrated or something's not going as I expected, we take a deep breath, and then we tell ourselves, I'm awesome. Everything's going to be okay. I can do this. Let's slow it down and then tell ourselves exactly what we want to hear. My husband was doing homework with my other son one time, and my son Owen was saying, oh, this is so hard. I don't want to do it. This is so hard. And my husband, I was so proud of him. He said, Owen, your brain believes whatever you tell it. Your brain believes whatever you tell it. So if you tell your brain, this is easy, I can do it, your brain will believe you. And I'm, proud mama back here going, oh, he's learned.
That is so good, right? That's what I always say about money. I'm like, money's easy. Like, it's the same thing, right? When you tell your brain, it will believe.
Yes. And so I think this is a huge concept that we probably take for granted sometimes. Our brain believes whatever we tell it. So tell it what we want it to believe. So I'd love to transition this to money. Tell us, how have you used the same skill to grow a $500,000 business?
Oh my gosh. It's so interesting because I just think back to who I used to be in relation to money. And it was so different. I was just in scarcity with money. I felt like there would never be enough money, and it would take me decades to pay off my student loan debt. And I really had a victim story about my debt. Like, this student loan debt sort of happened to me and I didn't really know, and not necessarily blaming it like on my parents or anyone, just kind of general blame, like this shouldn't have happened to me. And I always say it's fine. You can keep that story, but if you do keep that story, you can't solve that problem. So I made a shift, right? So instead of kind of being the victim of that story, I decided, okay, what if this has happened for me? Like, what does this make possible? And that's a lot of debt, right? It's $200,000. So I started to see it as kind of a gift. And that was the first shift. And my second shift was realizing that debt is neutral. It doesn't mean anything about you. So debt doesn't have meaning. It only has the meaning that you give it. So I decided, like, my debt means nothing about me. I don't care what any other expert says. So I didn't let my current financial, situation define me. And that meant I was free to create a new identity around money. So, and for everyone listening, log into your bank account and notice the first emotion that you have. Mine now, I can proudly say, is appreciation and gratitude. I get like warm and fuzzy when I log into my bank account. And it's not because of the money. And it's important that everyone understands this, right? So I like to think about if a checking account had $10,000 in it and you put 100 different people in front of that account, they would have 100 different feelings, right? Is it Mark Cuban? Is it someone who's currently out of a job? Is it you? Is it me? So if the money's the same, but the feelings are different, then what's causing your feelings is your thoughts. And while it might be fine if you have a negative emotion about your money in the instant, what happens is you create your future in your mind, right? So the past and the future only exist as sentences in your head. So when you are practicing scarcity and thinking thoughts like money is tight, your brain's going to look for evidence of that. And so what I've really done, no matter what the income is for the month, and this isn't just now, in the past as well, is to like appreciate the money that I have now and want more from having enough. And this is totally counterintuitive. We're not really taught this, right? We're taught to want from lack. It's like, I hate my body, so I want to lose weight. And then we lose the weight and we think we need to do one more thing. And all along the way, we're like hating ourselves. And so that's wanting from lack. It's wanting to change something because you hate it. And what I teach is to do the opposite. It's to want to change from a place of having enough, because that's what you'll create more of. So I always say I have enough money. I like to say I'm rich. And this is something that I like to believe about me and about other people. And I just think there's no downside to it if you're really clean. Like, it's not from greed. It doesn't feel negative. It's like an abundant flow of money. And so really working on that relationship so that what happens is you treat your money so much better. It's not the opposite. You don't say I'm rich and then go spend all your money. You care about it more. You take it more seriously, and but you don't hoard it. You don't overspend it. Like, that's both from scarcity. Instead, there's this even flow. You're really confident that you can create more money, but you're also willing to spend and invest, and you have that capacity to have it. And these are things that I've worked on, for the last, 5 to 10 years. So if you're just starting out, I remember listening to podcasts when I just started out about money and wanting to believe what the person was saying. And so if that's you, like, you're doing it right. You're learning about it. That's the first step. And to see, what are my beliefs about money? How do I feel when I log into my bank account? And knowing that how you think and feel about your money is always a choice, regardless of the actual dollars in the bank account.
I love it. I did a money mindset panel at our last conference, and I had everybody yell, "I am rich."
I love it.
And then I said, all right, how do you feel about that? Because it really does show you some of these underlying connotations that we may have about what rich people do or what money really means, when, again, money is neutral. Money doesn't.
So fascinating. I love that. No, just because it's so interesting, right? And generally people want to have more money, and they want for themselves and for their families and for everyone to have more money. But then how they think about quote unquote rich people and how they think about people who have money is totally incongruent with that. It's actually attracting the opposite of it.
And I even know people who pride themselves on being frivolous, or buying the cheapest thing, or they have this sense of pride for not spending money and not having money, but yet they're the ones that I know that talk about money all the time.
So interesting, right? It's kind of like if you think about losing weight. Let's say you want to lose weight, like 50 pounds, 100 pounds. It's all you think about. But when you're actually at your goal weight and you're healthy, you don't really think about it. Like, I don't think about my weight really. It's kind of like that with money. Like, I love my money and I appreciate it, but I'm not stressing about it and thinking about it all day long.
Yeah. I often say that having more money gives you the brain space to live your dreams. Because again, like we said, it's hard to live in drama and dreams at the same time. And so having money, which means maybe you have help with cleaning the house, or you have help with mowing the yard, or you have help with shopping for groceries, or, it's not just all on you all of the time. You are able to outsource some of that stuff, which gives you more brain space, which gives you the time to be creative and to tap in and use your gifts and develop things and take classes and do the things that fill you up, because you aren't in the daily grind of freak out.
Yes, 100% echo that.
So tell us about the current programs that you offer, and maybe even a testimony of someone that you've worked with that you have found had a pretty cool breakthrough.
Oh my gosh, yes. So my main program right now is Grow You. It's an online virtual life coaching program. I'm obsessed with it and my clients. Every month we go through a new topic, a new personal development topic, and I help them. So money is 1 month. Relationships is another month. Productivity and time management is another month. Mindset and feelings. So we go through all of the 12 kind of life months, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there. They get coaching from me and that sort of thing. There are so many breakthroughs from clients. I'm so humbled and proud to say that. I get emails all the time. Just recently, I had 2 different people email me and say, one lost 16 pounds and one lost 20 pounds just from going through. There's a bonus course in there called How to Change Your Eating Habits Forever. Another person, she's got little ones at home, and she said she finally started to plan and use her calendar and actually follow through. So she's building a business and just found that she was really using her kids as an excuse to not get anything done. And so for her, that was a huge, huge accomplishment. A lot of members will say that they have a lot more money now and feel clean about that, instead of thinking that that's greedy or wrong or something.
Awesome.
I'm trying to think what else. Oh, the only other thing, I teach a lot of business. So I have a business program. It's actually new, coming out, kind of for corporate women who want to leave and start their business.
Well, I think that's the thing, is when you put yourself in a community of people who either are 3 steps ahead of you, or maybe are just it's a different environment, just like your traffic and conversion summit that you went to. You're choosing to put yourself in a community of growth-focused, positive people, and that will help you to stay consistent. That accountability, as a participant, you'll grow within that environment. So I love that you're offering that to people.
Absolutely. It's been an honor and a privilege, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a weird question.
Totally.
Because you've been doing this, you've pivoted several times, you've listened to your intuition, you've said, all right, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it. Imagine life, let's say, a year ago, you hadn't made this choice. You hadn't said yes to quitting your job and starting your business and going in full force. What do you think life would look like if you were still working your corporate job with this desire in your heart?
I think it would look a lot like the path that I was on 5 years ago. There just wouldn't have been that change. So I would be working as a financial planner, and I would probably be a little bit higher up in my career, working a normal 9-to-5 job, still, caring about my career and really showing up and helping people with their money. I think that I have just learned that I really like to be a leader and an entrepreneur. So if it weren't for my student loan debt, I don't know that I would have come across this opportunity to start a blog and a business. But I have to think that, let's just say I never had the student loan debt and I ended up, just being a lawyer. I think eventually I would have come across the opportunity to be a life coach or do something else on my own. And I think, just knowing my heart, that I would have taken it down the road as well.
I think it's so interesting to think of, all right, well, what if I say yes? What does that look like? And then what if I stay the same? What does that look like? Because I know the truth never changes. And that bug that you've had to serve people and to help people, like, that still would have been there. And so there probably would have been another way for you to get exactly where you are right now, as long as you continued to say yes. I was a clinical psychologist before an entrepreneur, and I often say, if I didn't start my own business and start coaching in that way, I probably would still be doing, that love is still there. You know what I mean? And I think it's kind of cool.
Energy.
Yeah. And
Totally.
so for those that are in that space where you're like, okay, do I listen or do I stay safe? In 5 years, if you stay safe, the truth never changes. That heart will still be there. And so, why not just say yes today, right?
Just go for it. Just go
for it.
And I always say, I'm like, you can always redecide. I'm always like, there's always another job I can get. Like, it feels so life or death in the moment. But I just, talking to myself, reminding myself, I can always get another job. It's okay, brain. You can calm down.
Well, and that's exactly it. The worst thing that could happen is, right? The worst thing that could happen. And oftentimes the worst thing isn't that big of a deal.
No, oftentimes the worst thing is what you're already doing, right? So you're failing ahead of time. You're already in the job. So if you start your own business and it fails and you want to go back to another job, you're where you were when you started, but at least you gave it a shot. At least you tried.
Absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Well, you have a podcast as well, which I'm excited about because it's called Design Your Dream Life, which I totally resonate with. That, of course, is the name of my book, Design Your Dream Life, where I combine science and scripture. So the quantum physics and epigenetics and all that kind of stuff to retrain your brain. And then I connect mine with scripture, because once you realize the science part of stuff, you go, oh my gosh, Jesus told us about this whole time.
Isn't that amazing?
Mind blowing.
I know. You're just like, what? What is happening? It's so good.
And then you're like, everybody needs to know this, which is why I started the podcast as well. So your podcast is called Design Your Dream Life. Tell us what you talk about on yours.
All the life coaching topics, really. So if you want a free life coaching lesson, the best thing you can do is just hop on over there. Goal setting, feelings, relationships, money, time management. We go through all of it.
Awesome. 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 Well, thank you so much for being a part of our show today and just connecting, sharing your wisdom and your heart with the audience. And you guys, I know there's a few takeaways that you can start implementing now, being aware, talking to yourself, but really just taken that bold action and trusting that intuition, saying yes to that dream because it's there for a reason. And it matters, right? Nobody has that dream but you. So thank you so much, Natalie. It's been great to get to know you. And everybody check out her podcast, Design Your Dream Life. Have a great day. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I want to hear your aha moment from today's amazing episode. If you could leave a review at whatever podcast player you choose to listen from, Apple Podcast, Castbox, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening from, leave a review and share with us your favorite part of today's episode. Thanks for hanging out, and remember to dream big.